loss of reverence from a section of the younger population, which says that Odinga has traded his democracy and good governance champion for a turncoat tag. So bad is the
Democratic Movement ODM party in this, which is his very first exclusive, in-depth and detailed interview after he started working with President William Ruto under the MOU 10-point agenda, as well as the AUC bid. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for granting us time and for speaking to the country through NTV.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, today I want us to start this conversation from a point of understanding. What is the true cost of being Raila Amolo Odinga?
Well, I cannot estimate the costs, but I can say that I'm not worried about those who do not understand what I'm trying to do. I always try to convince them to see the things the way I see them. In 2023, we were in the streets and we had very concrete issues that we were raising. One of them was the issue of the elections of 2022. Because as you know, we had opportunity to access the server, and which was telling completely different story of the one that was announced by Mr. Chebukati. So we pressed for the server to be opened. And secondly, we also talked about the high cost of living, which was really putting a lot of stress on the population of our country. And we also talked about the issue of corruption in the country. That, you know, there was a very violent reaction to our demonstrations, and we lost quite a number of our people. We did come out clearly saying that change must come in the country. And all in all, we lost about 70 people at that time. But then the international community intervened, and we had a conversation with President Ruto and agreed to set up a task force to mediate and come up with proposals on how to deal with the issues in contention. It was led by Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and Mr. Kimani Ichung'wah. They came up with what you call the NADCO report. And we then said the NADCO report needed to be implemented. It was taken to Parliament, but there was quite a bit of prevarication, but it eventually went through Parliament. But before it was implemented, then, of course, the Gen Z issue came up.
June 2024.
Just June 2024. Had the NADCO report been implemented earlier, we would not have ended up with the
Gen Z protests? Exactly.
Because the issues that the youth were raising were very similar to the ones that we were raising the previous year. Now, the youth, of course, say that they were out to finish the job. They asked me to stay home. And I did respect their wishes, and I stayed home. And, of course, they went further than we had gone. They stormed the Parliament. They even stormed the judiciary. And they were on their way to State House when they were blocked by the forces. But when they overwhelmed the police, then the regime tried to bring the military. When we protested that military cannot be deployed on civilian population without express authority of Parliament, they went to Parliament and coerced Parliament to pass it. You saw the military on the streets for the first time, which was a very dangerous development. Now they were stalemate at that time. And there was a danger that ultimately the military would come to take over. We were almost on the brink of that happening at that time. But then when that happened, there were speculations as to what was going to happen. The Gen Zs were not able now to come on the streets, and that was actually going to create a state of anarchy in our country. We've seen what has happened in other countries in a similar situation. So in that charged environment, one of my colleagues, President Uhuru Kenyatta, called me. He was in the US, and basically suggested that although he knows I don't want to talk to Mr. Ruto, in the interest of the country, I need to find a way of talking to him.
When was this?
Pardon?
When was this? Immediately after the Gen Z protests?
Do you remember I issued a statement condemning what was happening and urged President Ruto to take measures to stop what was happening, the brutality that was taking place. I did not even have to eventually look for Mr. Ruto. He asked to come and see me and agreed that we could talk. When we had discussions, it was very clear to him. I said, this is the issues, these have come up because you did not implement the NADCO report. That's why we are where we are today. And under these circumstances, you must have a broader conversation to bring the people together so that you can be able to convert the issues which are in contention. He was reluctant, but eventually he agreed. And he announced that he was going to convene a forum for Kenyans to have a discussion on the issues in contention. Of course, this was rejected by the Gen Zs, that it was a waste of time, because I supported this proposal. It was actually my idea. But then they say that, we have had these conversations several times, the issues are clear, that the government just need to implement what is being demanded. Then Ruto actually came up and said, okay, I'm going to dissolve the cabinet. And I'm also not going to sign the finance bill. I'm referring it back to Parliament. In my view, that is what pricked the balloon. Because now there are no issues. There was no government, and there was also no finance bill. You see? And once that happened, Ruto now said that he was going to form a government in consultation with all stakeholders to create a consensus. We said we don't want to stay in government until we have had a conversation as a people, which did not happen. Then he said he would at least appoint half of the cabinet so that there was no stalemate, which he did. After doing that, we tried to consult among ourselves in Azimio if we could find a way of participating in a broad-based government. I myself was against it. My other colleagues were also against it. But then eventually, the group within my party felt that the statement that we had required that some experts who are not part of the Kenya Kwanza regime can go into the government and see how they can help to steady the ship and come up with new ideas to deal with the issues in contention.
At this particular point, Excellency, in your own words, you've said that the Gen Z protests of June 2024 happened because the recommendations in the NADCO report had not been implemented. I would go further and say the recommendations in the NADCO report are well captured in Chapter 10 of the Constitution on national values and principles of governance. But the solution to these recommendations not being implemented was by having ODM leaders or members joining government?
No. What I'm trying to say was the country was in a state of crisis. It was a stalemate, as it were. You see, one time Ruto must go, Ruto is not going. And the streets have become almost inaccessible. So it is a stalemate which can actually create a state of anarchy. And that anarchy can end up in a state like Somalia. That is not what we thought was an option. And that's really why this decision was taken at that time, to get a government at least moving forward, which somebody can negotiate with. And that's how we allowed our people to join the government. And I said, we were not in government at that time, and which is true, until after we did clear negotiations and came up with the 10-point agenda. That is when formally the ODM agreed to join a broad-based government.
Now that you've brought the conversation to the 10-point agenda and the memorandum of understanding between ODM and UDA, what was the difference in recommendations between NADCO and the 10-point agenda?
This is not different. Those are the issues which are in contention. And they're just spelled out clearly in the 10-point agenda. And now we've agreed that we are going to now do an analysis of on implementation of those 10-point agenda. Actually, we have set up a task force to see how they've been implemented, what has been implemented and what has not been implemented in the 10-point agenda. And shortly, a report is going to be issued by that task force.
As leader of ODM, in terms of even analyzing what has been implemented, even before the task force, there are things that are live. For instance, compensation for victims of, for past victims of protests and victims of rights violations. Today, after the 10-point agenda, those killed in the June 2024 protests, the Gen Zs, have not been compensated. This is something you can assess. This is something that does not require a task force. What is your position on the lack of compensation? What is your position on the fact that peaceful protests has been criminalized?
I have actually come out openly to criticize the government. Remember when, for example, the minister said that people should be shot if they try to attack a police station. I said it was totally out of order. When President Ruto said, shoot the legs, I also came out and said, no, that will mean you're taking law into your own hands. I said that nobody should have a right to shoot. If somebody is actually committing a crime, the duty of the police are to arrest that person and take him to the courts. It is only after due process that somebody should be actually punished. That I said clearly, very clearly, that is not our position. On the issue of compensations, we have said this must happen. And shortly, you're going to see what is going to happen. The compensations are going to start.
Excellency, how are these compensations going to start? The national budget was passed just the other day. There was no provision anywhere in the budget about compensation. This is something you sat and discussed with President William Ruto, ODM and UDA and said this must happen within the very first financial year, it's clearly not factored in.
There's always provision of contingencies in the budgets. The contingency fund is available, and I just want you to hold your horses. Shortly, there's going to be compensations, which is going to start, and we now have a task force to deal with it. Yes.
Do we need a task force? Because you're speaking about a task force.
No, to implement.
No, this is a different question, Your Excellency. Do we have a task force? Do we need a task force, rather, to assess on whether, so far, the leadership and integrity, which was quoted in the 10-point agenda, the fact, the point about ethical governance, which is part of the reason as to why Gen Zs went to the protest. Do you need a task force to assess whether that has changed today?
No, you don't need a... Why? Did I say you need a task force?
Yes, as you said, that there is a task force that will analyze the implementation of the 10-point agenda so far so that it informs your next move.
Exactly what I'm saying. We need somebody to look at what has been done and what has not been done. That is for our internal consumption. It's not for the public. We just have it, and we have not even announced it. But we have. I'm telling you that we have a task force doing that for our own purposes. And we will soon give you an account of what has been implemented and what has not been implemented.
Again, I take you back to picking Raila Odinga's position on abductions and killings. Abductions and killings happened in June 2024. Abductions and killings happened in the Azimio protest of 2023. Abductions and killings are happening today after the 10-point agenda in violation of the 10-point agenda. Which is a red line for Raila Odinga and ODM?
You see, this is not just Raila Odinga. This is the issue of ODM as a party. And we just had a National Executive Committee meeting last week in which we took a position on those issues, which I'm not going to divulge right now. But we as a party have our positions on this. There's a red line, which of course, if it crosses, we will take a decision. But at the moment, I just want to tell you that some of those issues are being implemented. Some have not been implemented. And we will give our position and say, if this and that is not done, we will have the option to do A, B, C, D, because that is also provided for in the MOU.
As we speak, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights records that 38 lives that were lost in the Sabasaba protests alone. There were the June 25th protests as well, 2025. Lives lost. The dignity of human life, the point of extrajudicial killings, was spoken about in the 10-point agenda. That's why I'm asking, then, what number will get us to this red line? Because you said there is a red line.
You see, on the issue of Sabasaba, we were actually commemorating Sabasaba. And I came out clearly and said I was going to go to Kamkunji to commemorate Sabasaba. Because Sabasaba was about Kamkunji. It was not about just general demonstrations countrywide, okay? And I said I would go to Kamkunji. Unfortunately, other people actually took actions elsewhere differently. And the situation actually became almost uncontrollable. You remember, I was not even able to go to Kamkunji because the streets were closed by the government. And Sabasaba was about going to Kamkunji to ask the people of Kenya if the country is ready for multipartyism.
Your Excellency, you are contradicting yourself when you say Sabasaba was about Kamukunji. This is why I say so. On 4th July 2023, these are 3 days to Sabasaba of 2023. This is what you said. You were at the SKM Command Center and you said that the only weapon that we have, this is direct quote, the only weapon that we have in our land is our sovereign power to picket, to protest, to boycott, and to embark on civil disobedience. We begin this on Friday, July the 7th. You went further to say that we invite all our people to prepare to join the Kamukunji in Nairobi and in different other places across the country on Friday. I want to repeat that it is not just in Nairobi, even other centers across the country. July 4th, 2023. 2 years down the line, what has changed?
But that is very specific. I said Kamukunji and also in other centers. In other words, people, wherever they are going to say, this is where we are going to go. This is where we are going to picket. So it must be specific. You must say clearly that we are going to go to this particular place to picket. If you're saying in Nairobi, we say we are going to Kamukunji. That's the only place. So it's not going to be in Kawangware, it's not going to be in Woodley, it's not going to be in Mukuru-Kwanjenga or anywhere else. It's a specific place. And that is where we have the police to be.
The people of Kenya who were taking part in the protest said they would do Sabasaba or take part in the protest, not at Kamukunji, but they said the specific places, Nairobi CBD, and they listed different other places which they were to occupy. Was there anything wrong with that?
Yes, I was just saying, CBD, you go to CBD, basically, you are going to cause a lot of destruction to the business of CBD. That's why even ourselves, when we were with Charles Rubia and Kenneth Matiba, we said we'll go to Kamukunji grounds, where we are going to talk to the people of Kenya and ask them if they are ready for multipartyism or not. So it was a very specific agenda. This is what I'm trying to say. There's nothing different. We're saying that if we are going to do demonstrations, we don't want the other people whose businesses are private to be affected. We want to go and make a point so that the government listens to what we are trying to say. This is what it is. So, and this is how it happens all over the world. It's not just in Kenya. It's
not just in Kenya. Let me take you back again to your speech, this particular Sabasaba, where you said you tried to differentiate what Sabasaba then was and what Sabasaba today appeared to be. And I'm simply quoting. And you said it was not about one group against the other or one part of the country against the other. Is this what you think this particular protest was about? One group against the rest of Kenya?
No. You see, Sabasaba, we had a definite objective. You see, a definite objective at that time was we had the issue of multipartyism. Now people are commemorating Sabasaba because they have other issues, but it is actually the same objective. In other words, you are trying to address the government on issues which are affecting the people at that period of time. Here, for example, people are talking about the cost of living. They're talking about unemployment. They're talking about corruption. These are issues which can affect the society. And you agree that you're going to address these issues at a particular time and particular place. So you mentioned the venue and the time where you're going to assemble and address those issues. So it's not just left anyhow.
Then why was it important for this to come out of your speech? That it was not one group against the entire nation, this community against that community, and we agree that was not what Sabasaba was in 1990. That equally is not what the protests in July and June 2025 were about. It is not about one community against the other or one part of the country against the other. Why was it important for this to be captured in your speech, Excellency?
No, but I was just being general. It was not one group like, say, the youth versus the elderly, or the west versus the east, or the north versus the south, or one gender versus the other gender, and so on and so forth. That's what I was just being general.
Okay.
Exactly.
Exclusive one-on-one with ODM leader Raila Odinga. That's the first part of that conversation. Let's take a very quick break. When we come back, we continue with that conversation. Stay with us.
Farmer's Choice has always been there, giving you trusted, wholesome nutrition for generations. Farmer's Choice, timeless joy.
New Downy refill pouches, lasting longer than expensive perfumes.